the BA Sports Podcast. We are live with Jim Coventry. Today, I'm joined by my guy, Jim Coventry from RotoWire. If you've been listening for the past few years, you know Jim and I have been doing these season preview episodes for about 3 years now. And Jim is one of the best in the business. He is FSWA Fantasy Football Writer of the Year finalist in 2022, playing since 1994 in fantasy football competitions. He's part of RotoWire, joined in 2016. And Jim, before we dive into the players we're buying into and avoiding, what are you working on right now, and where can the listeners find your content?
The main hub is on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. You get my stat of the day, you get my thread of the day. Any show I'm doing, I'll post that up. I'm on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, channel 87, weekends 2 to 4 Eastern, late nights Thursday, 10 to midnight Eastern, and also on RotoWire. You can put my articles behind a paywall. If you want 15% off there, go to rotowire.com, use the code YouTube15, and you're all set up.
That's awesome, Jim. Everyone go check out his content. Jim puts out great content on X. And Jim, before we get into our players we're buying and avoiding, what's one player this offseason you found yourself talking about more than expected?
Yeah, it's going to have to be DK Metcalf. That was the one that I didn't think highly of. And I have time to talk about this one, right?
Yep.
Yep. So this was the whole deal with Metcalf. We know in 2020 he had that crazy 1,300-yard season. And since he's been a 1,000-yard receiver. And as I'm thinking it through, I'm always interested why. And it's so easy to say career year, 4 years since, never going back. But then we realized that year he had, I realized the league was mostly playing one safety deep, one safety in the box. Metcalf was just tearing the top off of defenses at one safety. And then, even though in 2021 he had a down year, the league really went to universal two high safety after they specifically targeted Seattle because Russell Wilson, that was his kryptonite. You put another safety over the top, and those moon balls didn't work. So DK Metcalf, and then obviously the rest of the league went too high. DK Metcalf has struggled. Well, guess what? He's with the Pittsburgh Steelers now, and Arthur Smith is going to play a lot of three tight ends, a lot of two tight ends, but the three is going to be like a staple. What does that mean? There is no defense in the league that can put two safeties high against Arthur Smith because the minute they do, they will pulverize you on the ground. So DK Metcalf is going to see one high safeties most of the year, and I don't know what Aaron Rodgers has left in the tank. Maybe not a lot, but it's not going to be a big stretch to see him running through and by one safety looks.
Yeah, and also last year, Rodgers gave Garrett Wilson a lot of targets his way, and Aaron Rodgers didn't look too bad towards the end of the year. So hopefully there is something left in the tank for him. I do like DK Metcalf this year, especially because you can get him later than he's been going in previous years. So it's kind of at a discount this year. And let's get into players we like, Jim. First up, player I like, Calvin Ridley. And he's last year 78th out of 85 qualified receivers in catchable target rate. So with Cam Ward at QB, I'm thinking he's going to get a lot more catchable targets. And his ADP is wide receiver 26 to 30. And he's going around 55th, 60th overall. So you can look for him probably around end of round 4, start of round 5 in 12-team leagues. He's wide receiver 28 or higher when he plays 13 plus games in a season, and you're drafting him near his floor. So I think it's a safe bet with Calvin Ridley having a better quarterback this year. Am I crazy for thinking he's a league winner, Jim?
Well, here's the thing. In April, Calvin Ridley was the wide receiver 42. I've been barking from every mountaintop since April. Calvin Ridley was a steal of every draft. And every 2 weeks, his ADP up, up, up. To go from wide receiver 42 to wide receiver 28 without an injury to another player, that is unheard of. Everybody's on Ridley now. You used to be able to get Ridley if you drafted early. You could get him like in the 7th round. Now you better get him in the 5th round because he's not going past that anymore. I still think it's a fair price. From week 8 on, last year, Ridley was averaging 14.2 PPR points. the yardage was up. He was definitely turned to as a focal point. There is no wide receiver two of consequence there. So I agree with you. And Cam Ward, regardless of what we think is going to be an upgrade from Will Levis and Mason Rudolph. So yeah, the community is in heavy on Ridley. You're smart to be in on Ridley. I still think at his inflated ADP now, I still think he's priced right. Probably ends about the wide receiver 23. So I still think it's a value.
Yeah, I agree. And Jim, who's a player you like up next that you want to target in drafts?
Yeah, and you know what? It just goes over and over, and we had to talk about, oh my gosh, I got the wrong list up here, and which player I gave you, DJ Moore. I have two lists here. DJ Moore is one of them. 2 years ago, DJ Moore was the wide receiver six. That was with Justin Fields. Last year was a disaster in Chicago. In that disastrous season, he was still the wide receiver 14. And yet he's priced outside the top 20 receivers, and his ADP has not flinched. I don't get it because the Bears fixed their interior offensive line. They brought in Ben Johnson. There is no way Ben Johnson is not going to utilize DJ Moore. And people are saying, okay, oh, Dunze with the X. That doesn't matter. That's a functional role. DJ Moore is a player you can weaponize. He has been in horrible situations his entire career. Last year was his worst yardage season, but again, for PPR, he was great. But he's normally money for 1,100 plus yards. And again, he has a 1,300 yard season on his resume. And there's no reason to think he can't put that up again with Ben Johnson calling the shots. And Caleb Williams is going to have a lot more clean looks. So I think the market completely didn't react, and they're missing this one.
I agree. Do you think he plays more of like the Amon Ra role in this Bears offense? How Ben Johnson has utilized Amon Ra as such a weapon in the pass game in his past seasons in Detroit?
The Bears are already talking about using him like Debo Samuel, using
Hmm.
him in a running back role on occasion because he's been a running back with the ball in his hands his whole career. And so that's just a beautiful thing with him. I don't know that it's going to be apples to apples for the Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think Ben Johnson is pigeonholed to anything. I think Ben Johnson figured out what was best for his players in Detroit. And I think he weaponized those players in specific ways. I think he's that smart of a guy. And so Romo Dunze is like nobody they had on that team. And DJ Moore, honestly, from a talent perspective, DJ Moore is exponentially better than Amon-Ra St. Brown. St. Brown was just
Oh yeah.
optimized. He's a good player,
Hmm.
but DJ Moore is legitimately like a top 10 NFL receiver by talent, and he might even be a top seven. But we've never seen it because of his situations. So I think it's going to be a role we really haven't seen. I think it's going to be weaponized because he can win deep, and people don't even talk
Yep.
about that. Remember with Justin Fields, he was like slaughtering people deep.
Oh yeah.
There are so many ways you can use him. So I think I get what your point is, but I think that it's going to be a unique role that we haven't seen.
I love that. Yeah, DJ Moore, I mean, performed exponentially great on such bad teams. So this probably is his best team yet, as you're saying. He's just been in tough situations from the Panthers to the Bears. And now, hopefully, with the offensive mind that Ben Johnson is, I think I really like DJ Moore. He's actually my wide receiver 19, I believe. So he's in my top 20 wide receivers. And honestly, I've been thinking about reaching for him a little bit in areas where I can
Mhm.
and where it feels right, because that's where you want to look whenever your draft is falling at. If you like a player and you can't get him on the turn, you're gonna have to take him like where you might reach a little bit, but it should pay off in the end if you really like him. And so the next player that I really like, and he's actually going to be one of my keepers in my keeper league, and I'm keeping him for a 17th round pick. So this is this is quite the steal. It's Chase Brown. So originally about a month ago, he was going as a round 3 pick, but he's moved into round 2 a little bit, and he actually went as the 15th player off the board in my draft last weekend. I was hoping to get him at the 16th pick. But Chase Brown is a guy who ended the season well from weeks 4 onward. He was the RB6 in points per game, and he could be a top 5 running back this season. I mean, the Bengals last year, their defense was not great. Joe Burrow was working overtime, and that offense was working overtime to keep up with the point total. And all their assets, all their receivers, both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins had great years. Chase Brown had a great year. And I think that continues because their defense didn't really get upgraded. And I think they're going to struggle just as they did last year. And this offense is going to keep the pace going. Taj Brooks is a great handcuff if you draft Chase Brown, but I don't see him as a Texas Tech grad watching him at Texas Tech. I think, he'll have some impact, but I don't think he's going to impact Chase Brown's fantasy value. And I think you're getting a great value at the end of round two, maybe middle of round two, with a running back that you compare with an elite wide receiver that you draft in round one. And Jim, what do you think about Chase Brown's ADP and how it's kind of risen a little bit on certain sites?
Yeah, Chase Brown was the running back 12. He's now the running back 8 in average reps. Again, that's a immense move up aboard. That doesn't happen. And the weird thing was, it happened after we found out Zach Moss wasn't coming back. And I was already thinking Zach Moss wasn't a threat. But
No.
the fantasy community must have, because that was a direct knee jerk reaction. And they finally got on board the fantasy community with where Brown should have been all along. Here's the thing with Chase Brown: you get free yards in that offense because defense are terrified of Chase and Higgins. So they've got to put everybody back to keep the explosive plays on. And there's always been free yards as a runner and a dump off receiver in that situation. And Chase Brown, I loved him coming out of college out of Illinois. He's like 215. He's a fairly sturdy size back. He's not this little scat back that people might have thought he was. He's not that. He can handle a decent workload here. And another thing, last year, the Bengals came into the season, they based their running attack around Zach Moss. A lot of gap schemes up, and it was not like conducive to Chase Brown, yet he still did well. Well, this year they figured it out. And I don't know why they were so slow to figure this out, because I could have told them day one Chase Brown was going to be way better than Zach Moss. But anyway, this year, Dan Pitcher, the offensive coordinator, he already realized what he has in Chase Brown. They're going to run more outside zone. The line is good enough for run blocking there, but the outside zone there is going to help, because again, with the free yards, the defense gives a running back against Joe Burrow in that passing attack. Brown is going to be slicing and dicing. There are going to be more explosive runs. They're going to build that attack in. So I really don't think you can draft Chase Brown high enough. Where he's going at, I was in a 14 team Kings Classic League, and I was at the turn 14, 15. I took him there. Didn't think twice about it. Took him over Jonathan Taylor. Taylor gets hurt all the time. But anyway, yeah, Chase
Yep.
Brown wheels up.
Yeah. And like you're saying, those dump off passes, those were very good for him last year in PPR leagues. So definitely look at Chase Brown in round two. I know people are saying round three, but it is round two
Not
now,
anymore.
honestly, because yeah, you're not going to get him in round three.
Nope.
Yeah, that ship has sailed. Jim, what's another player you like? And I also like this player.
Yeah, Dak Prescott. And look, I know he's had two horrible seasons. And even last year, he was hurt and missed half, but when he played, he didn't look good. But in the odd number of years, and that's like voodoo stuff, but in 2023, 2021, 2019, this guy was a quarterback 2, the quarterback 3, and the quarterback 7. There are very few quarterbacks who have that type of resume. And the beauty in Dallas is this: George Pickens is a game changer, because they need someone to stretch the field, and it's going to open up for Lamb. It's going to open up for Jake Ferguson. And of course, Pickens is one of the best ball winners downfield. He's going to be a big force for that team. And the rushing attack is going to be one that doesn't sustain offense. I don't see Javante Williams, Jadon Blue, Miles Sanders. I don't see a sustaining rushing attack. So they're going to have to lean heavily on the pass. And the offensive line, look, they retooled it. It's not a bad line, although they've lost players. Like Zach Martin's gone, Tyron Smith's been gone a couple of years. They've retooled it along the way. This is a good line. And then with their defense, all the injuries and the Micah Parsons hold in, that defense is probably going to be hemorrhaging points. So Dak Prescott's going to be in weekly shootouts, and I think that they're not going to be able to throw enough, and it's going to be huge for him. So I think you're getting him. His ADP's gone up, and I know I probably helped steam that market up a little bit, but not on his bandwagon for a while. But right now, you probably got to draft him around quarterback 9 if you want to get him. I still think it's a value.
Yeah, I completely agree. I actually took him last week in my draft. I got him in round 9, and I agree. I'm a Cowboys fan. Our defensive secondary is banged up. Our linebacker core is banged up, overshown,
Mhm.
injured. The D
Mhm.
line is kind of the heart of the defense, but they can't do everything. They can't cover the wide receivers that are going to be running free. I mean, we saw Devontae Adams cooking this Cowboys secondary in the practice, joint practice. It was just abysmal from what I saw out of the
Mhm.
defense. And like you're saying, the run game, I mean, sure, Jadon Blue can emerge, but is he really the guy that gets a bulk amount of carries? I don't see that happening. But yeah, this offensive line's very young. So that is good. You know, they did retool it. I really like what they've done along the offensive line. Tyler Booker, great guard out of Alabama. I love that draft pick this year.
Mhm.
And yeah, adding George Pickens plus Dak is tied to Schottenheimer's contract. So the two have 4 years left on the contract. So if Dak's gonna need to do well for Schottenheimer to keep his job, you know. So the two are gonna work together and getting a weapon like George Pickens to pair alongside CD Lamb. We've been as Cowboys fans just hoping for something after Amari Cooper left.
Right.
And we get it now. Two guys that are younger than 26 years old and Dak, like you're saying, in odd number years. I love it. And Brian Schottenheimer, you know, he let Russ cook in 2020. It was close to a 60% pass rate. And I don't see that being any different this year. I mean, the run game last
Right.
year was not great, and these running backs just don't make a difference in Dallas.
Yeah,
It,
I love it. Great
it's
call on that.
yeah. Yeah. And now let's go into some avoiding players we don't want to draft. We're seeing they're kind of going earlier than expected. And the first one on my list, even though he came off the pup list today, this morning, actually, Terry McLaurin, he's going as wide receiver 19, probably around round 3 pick. And maybe you could get him in round 4, but he was wide receiver 7 last year. That solely had to do with him catching 13 touchdowns,
Mhm.
career high. 29% of his PPR points came from touchdowns. And that's the one thing that's tough to gauge year over year is touchdowns. And you enter Debo Samuel, who's going to steal touchdowns away from Terry McLaurin. I'm a little scared of this just because he's been holding out. Now, Cliff Kingsbury yesterday was saying, you know, he needs to get on the field. We need him in the offense. We need to get this thing going. And, you know, you enter Debo, last year, next closest, Zach Ertz at 7 touchdowns, and then Zacchaeus at 3. So surely Jaden Daniels is going to spread the ball around a little more this year. And he's 29 years old. So I understand why he wants that contract. I understand why he's holding out. He's approaching 30. But last year, wide receiver 7, he was wide receiver 14 in 2022 and wide receiver 20 in 2020. The other 3 years, he was wide receiver 25 or lower. So you're drafting him above his floor, kind of near his ceiling, but we've seen his ceiling as a top 14, top 10 wide receiver. I'm just a little nervous about this, especially with a lot of the PPR points coming from touchdowns last year with Terry McLaurin. So I'm trying to avoid him. I like other guys in this range. I even like guys like you can get later, like George Pickens, Calvin Ridley,
Yep.
Tedero McMillan. Those guys are going much later than Terry McLaurin, and they have a potential to boom at their draft price, and you can buy a little lower on them. So yeah, that is my avoid. Jim, do you think people are walking into a trap by drafting Terry McLaurin at his ADP right now?
Well, you cited the touchdowns in the prior 4 years before the 13. It was 4 and 5 every year. It's nice rate. That's pretty normal. But if you take the touchdowns away, and I know you really can't, but that season McLaurin had was the same season he had every other year. It was about 80 catches, it's about 1,000 to 1,100 yards. It was the same thing, but the touchdowns. And so a 1 year outlier. And again, I know Jaden Daniels there and the offense wasn't good before, so they were going to score more points. But this hold in, hold out, this still doesn't is not a good thing because it I don't have data on it, but a lot of players that come back from these holdouts, they don't really hit the ground running sometimes. And last year, the direct example is Brandon Ayuk. He was terrible. He had one good game before he blew out his ACL in week 7. But missing camp time, it's understated. And so I just that's a negative vibe that's there right now. And in the meantime, you mentioned Jaden Daniels is getting valuable chemistry with Debo Samuel and others. And it might be the point where he doesn't feel he has to lock down his heart on McLaurin. And there's no guarantee this deal gets done either, because the
Mhm.
Commanders are very nervous because they're talking long term deal. Well, McLaurin is not a player that's going to age well because he can't like make a graceful move to the slot. He's not that guy. He's an outside receiver. So they
Mhm.
have this year and maybe next. And if they're paying him beyond that, odds are, look, Jones was done at 32. Even though he's playing, DeAndre Hopkins was done at 32. Why would Terry McLaurin be any different?
Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, definitely try to avoid Terry McLaurin at his draft price. Now, if he falls in your draft, maybe
Mhm.
you can pull the trigger on it. But right now, I think he's going a little too high for my liking. Jim, who's a player first up on your avoid list?
Yeah, I'm way concerned about Tyreek Hill, and obviously he's much cheaper than in the past. He used to be the wide receiver 2 or 3 in drafts. Now he's like the wide receiver 15 or 14. But I'm still out on him because last year he had the wrist injury all year long, and I get it, and that was an issue. I'm not going to understate that. But what I can't make work with that is he had a 38th percentile yards after the catch rate. Tyreek Hill was always in the 90 to 95th to 100th percentile in that area, and I think it was a combination of a few things. I do think age 30 caught him a little bit. I think he lost a tiny bit, which is all it takes to be mortal. And then the second thing we had going was with Tua Tagovailoa, he's a very limited quarterback. Can't drive the ball to the perimeter, underthrows, deep passes. Defenses dare him to win there. So that means they pack bodies down. So part of Tyreek Hill's yards after the catch was also so many bodies in the short area of the field. And he's not Superman anymore. He's more like Batman. And there's a difference there. He doesn't have that, over the top elite athleticism, I don't think. And the other thing was, remember when Tyreek would get those deep passes from Tua, who'd underthrow him by 5 yards? Tyreek would run back, jump over 2 defenders, grab the ball, run another 30 yards. Last year, when those balls were underthrown, Tyreek wasn't getting back to him. So I think that's where I can kind of quantify he lost a little something. And then how many times he said, not happy in Miami, not happy in Miami. He doesn't want to be
Hmm.
there. And the beat writers will say he's an emotional guy, but and back to Tua. If Tua misses time, which he always seems to, except for 2 years ago, so all these red flags and another year older for Tyreek Hill, I can't bet on that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Wide receiver 32 in points per game last year. It's a pretty big fall off from the years prior. Wide receiver 13 in ADP, like you're saying, a lot cheaper than he was in years past, but there's a reason for that. And Jalen Waddle going as the wide receiver 32 right now, he might be my bet to have a better role in that offense. He's younger. He's
Mhm.
forming a chemistry with Tua. Tyreek's already had his oblique injury kind of banged up already in the preseason.
Right?
So it's just like you're saying, Jim, too many red flags. But with Jonnu Smith leaving, it opens up some targets in this
Mhm.
offense. And I think those go Jalen Waddle's way. And they could also go Devon Achan's way. I like both of those Miami Dolphins players. But yeah, Tyreek Hill is a guy I'm looking to avoid if I can. It's a tough situation, and an aging wide receiver. There's just a lot of red flags. What we've seen in the past, like you were talking about, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins. We've seen wide receivers fall off as they get into their 30s, and Tyreek Hill is into his 30s. Let's go into the next player of my avoid list. It is Aaron Jones. I just don't know how healthy he can stay this year. He had a career high in rushing attempts last year, played all 17 games, played through multiple injuries. Good by him playing through those injuries. But how does he hold up at 30 years old? The decline for running backs usually start around 28, 29. But I mean, he kind of defied those odds last year. He had a solid season, but that's just because he played all of those 17 games. He was running back 20 in points per game last year, and the Vikings acquired Jordan Mason, who I believe they're gonna give a little run to. And Aaron Jones has said this offseason that they're not going to give him the bulk of the carries, because how can they give Aaron Jones the bulk of the carries when they want him to hold up to, if they make the playoffs later down the road? They're going to give Jordan Mason more carries than people expect this year, I believe. And Jordan Mason, ADP RB 35, 98th overall. So you can get him a lot cheaper than Aaron Jones, who's going as RB 26, 64th overall. 30 picks later, I would put my money on Jordan Mason rather than Aaron Jones. You get a younger running back, a running back who doesn't catch passes, Jordan Mason, but he can run the first, second down carries. They'll put him in, swap him series. Aaron Jones is a good receiving back, so they may put him in for those type downs. And I just don't see him paying off for the where he's going right now as RB26. You could get a Tony Pollard in that range, who I believe is a little better bet, especially with the Tajay Spears injury. And Tony Pollard is a lot younger, so he doesn't worry me quite as much as Aaron Jones, even though we've seen Tony Pollard, his injury history. But yeah, Aaron Jones, Jim, what do you think about Aaron Jones and his ADP, and which running back would you rather have in the Vikings backfield?
Yeah, on the surface, the ADP doesn't look bad, but when you point out who you can get in that range, I would rather, like you said, take Tony Pollard a little before him, but probably in the same round or so of your draft. DeAndre Swift has a floor that's going to be excessively high, and Aaron Jones has 2 seasons with 5 fumbles in the last 3 years, and I don't think they're going to trust him at the goal line because of that. And that means Jordan Mason, who supposed to be a goal line guy, you're going to chop some touchdowns there. That's going to hurt. But I do believe, as you said, Jordan Mason is the early down grinder. They traded for him. They added center, 2 guards off season. They really shored up that interior line. They really want to be a physical run team. And I think Aaron Jones, like you said, he'll catch passes. But we haven't seen JJ McCarthy throw passes to running backs. We always think it's just easy to throw a screen to a running back. Not always. Sometimes they're touch passes, and we don't know. So there's another variable. So yeah, I would just go, like I said, Tony Pollard to be the way a little earlier, DeAndre Swift. But I'm not really excited because I don't think Aaron Jones has the upside of last year or previous years.
Yeah, Jordan Mason has that upside, I believe. So that's why I'm targeting him a little later than Aaron Jones. Jim, who's next on your avoid list?
Nothing to do with the player's talent, nothing to do with his performance. It has to do with situation. It's Puka Nakua. Right now, Tony Romo summed it up best. Tell me somebody who used to have a bad back, because there's nobody. Once you have a bad back, it's a bad back. And Matthew Stafford already had epidural shots for impingement in his vertebrae. That's not good. And he was supposed to be back to practice, and as of this recording, he wasn't back to practice. It's going to be a
Hmm.
problem. And he's 37 years old, Matthew Stafford is. So I think him holding up to a season is dicey. And then you throw in the fact that Larrick Jackson, left tackle, he's missed the entire offseason with blood clots. Now, the poor man had this earlier in his career and he played, but another round of blood clots, there's no guarantee we're going to see him this year. And now, if you're talking no left tackle and Matthew Stafford taking extra hits, so I'm buying in on Puka Nakua because that whole picture together works. If Jimmy Garoppolo's in, do I really trust him to function like Matthew Stafford? No, not even close. Jimmy Garoppolo is a backup for a reason. And these are all timing routes. And I tell you what, ask George Kittle what he thinks of Jimmy Garoppolo. He used to hang him out to dry on passes all the time. Puka's always being scraped off the field. It plays a
Oh
physical
yeah.
style, blocks. I just think all those things. It's not about Puka Nakua. It's about the ancillary stuff. And I'm very terrified of drafting Rams right now because of Stafford
Would you put Devonte Adams in that category, like you said, Rams? Devonte
and
Adams, you're a
Kyron
little
Williams.
scared to draft.
And Kyron
Yeah,
Williams
yeah,
because
yep.
if Stafford misses time and Jimmy Garoppolo's in, defense are going to load up the box. They're going to say, you
Hmm.
know what, Jimmy Garoppolo, go ahead and beat us because you probably can't.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, Jim. I actually wrote my ADP landmine to avoid was Puka Nakua in round one. And I know it's kind of shocking for people to hear, but when you're looking at the situation, red flag after red flag, bad back, you get Jimmy G. I mean, I don't know if you saw the clip last week. He put a pass over the middle, and Devontae Adams almost got killed. If it was an actual game, Devontae Adams would have probably gotten his head taken off.
Right?
But that's just scary. It's just scary to have the unknown at the quarterback position for these Rams wide receivers, these Rams running backs. It's like give me guys like Nico Collins, Devon Achan, Malik Neighbors. I'd rather have Malik Neighbors over Puka Nakua in the first round right now. And Nico Collins, I think I have that ranked that way, but yeah, he has fallen for me in my rankings over the past couple of weeks just because of the Matthew Stafford news alone. And like you said earlier this week, he was supposed to start practicing. That did not happen, and he still is not practicing. So what is going on there? There's just a lot going on that we don't like, and I want to avoid. I completely agree with you on that situation. So now, Jim, let's go into a little buy or sell rapid fire here. I'm going to name off 7 players, and you can give a little spiel on if you buy or sell them. So Jerry Judy, rounds 5 through 7, we're seeing him going buy or sell out of his ADP.
Buy in PPR leagues. The second half of the season, 10.3 targets a game. He ended up with 1,200 yards. Look, not the greatest player, but he is a reliable inside player from the perimeter. He's going to get a ton of targets. That floor is going to be great every week.
Love that. Next up, Jim, Christian McCaffrey as a round 1 pick. Can we trust him at his first round price, which is about 8th overall in PPR leagues? Buy or sell on Christian McCaffrey in round 1?
Hesitant buy. If you're in a tournament, shoot for the ceiling and get him. Here's the thing I'll tell you. If you take the long angle, 5 years, 3 of those years, he's missed more than half the season. If you take the short angle, in 2 of the last 3 years, he's played every game. And last year was a training injury, not a football injury. I'm in the latter. I do believe the training injury, he's healthy. There's no reason to think he won't be healthy because those last 2 years he played, he was out there full time. So it's a hesitant buy. But if I'm just in a 12-team league with not a tournament attached, I might just pass the risk and take someone else.
Yeah. Tournament aspect, I agree. I'm probably buying him just because of the upside is there. He's been RB1 or RB2
Yep.
in I think 4 out of
For
the 8 seasons.
every healthy
Yeah,
season,
it's
actually.
yeah, so it's like, why not? He's been also been a top 10 running back every healthy season. And so if you can get him at the end of round 1, I feel a lot more comfortable, but you are taking a risk. So I would probably follow it up with drafting Isaac Garendo, his handcuff, which you can get later in drafts. He's going super late right now, and that may just be because he got a little banged up in the preseason, but I love that as a handcuff, and it kind of saves you with Christian McCaffrey if he does get hurt. But this offense really needs to run through him and Kittle, because other than that, it's
Mhm.
Ricky Pearsall. You got a young wide receiver banged up last year, had the whole shooting incident. It was just unfortunate, and he never got going. But Ricky Pearsall can make an impact. Brandon Ayuk's injured. I mean, they're gonna go to their guys, and their guys are Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. So
Yep.
I do like Christian McCaffrey at the end of round 1. Next up, buy or sell RJ Harvey, Jim.
I'm gonna buy here, and the reason is they bring in J.K. Dobbins and Harvey's ADP went down, which is good. Dobbins is going to play, but he's missed more games than he's played in his career. So durability, I can't expect him to be around. But here's the other thing. I just heard that Sean Payton was talking about the offense and how they're able to do so much more this year with some outside zone concepts because last year they just didn't have the running back horses to do it. They have an excellent offensive line. They want to play defense and run the ball. So I think there's enough actually for Harvey and Dobbins to go around. But again, Dobbins ultimately will miss time. And during those weeks, Harvey could be like crazy productive. Sean Payton has a history of being able to get 2 running backs going. So I think this pick is a good value pick.
Yeah, I agree. We saw this from Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. So hopefully we can see it again in Denver. And next up on the buy or sell list, Emeka Egbuka. He's current ADP is 107th overall, wide receiver 46. Buy or sell?
It's a tough one. I'm probably selling because I think at some point this year, Chris Godwin's going to be healthy. I don't think they're talking he might be on pup for missed 4 games, but I think when we get in the second half of the season, you got Mike Evans, you got Chris Godwin, and obviously both had elite performance with Baker Mayfield. And I just think Abuka is going to be the third wheel when it comes down to money time. In the beginning of the season, he'll probably be great while Godwin's out. But I just think at the end of the day, it's going to be Evans and Godwin, and so I'm fading
hmm
Abuka because of the second half of the season.
Yeah, and if he gets off to a hot start and you drafted him, I'd be fine with trading and selling high because yeah, Chris Godwin was one of my fantastic calls last year at the end of drafts. I was like his ADP is too low. He was going to get put in that slot
Mhm.
role. The second he comes back, he's going to be right back in that slot role, and he's going to take targets away from Igbuka. Igbuka, like you're saying, he's going to play a little third fiddle on this offense. But I've even seen him being reached on Jim around pick 75 to 90. So his price is going up just because of the hype surrounding him and everyone's raving about him in practice. But like you're saying, he's going to be the third option on this offense once everyone comes around and gets healthy. So definitely be cautious when drafting Emeka Egbuka. Don't reach for him. If he falls, I'm fine with taking it. Late round flyer on him, but be cautious about Egbuka. Definitely don't reach for him. Next up is a crowded backfield, Jim. We've got Travis Etienne, buy or sell.
So I am buying if you're in a PPR league, and here's why.
Hmm.
Liam Cohen crafted one of the best screen games I've seen last year. It was a complex screen game. It was an effective screen game, and if he's clearly going to bring that to Jacksonville. And Travis Etienne is a dynamic receiver. Bashal Tutin's a straight line runner. I see him more of a runner than a big time pass catcher. Bigsby can't catch passes. Other running backs would be involved in early downs, but in the passing situations, ETN could get 60 receptions. And if you're talking pick 91 and I need a third running back in that PPR league, yeah, I want that. And don't even discount the chance that if the running game kind of gets clicked up with Cohen coaching, that maybe we see some of that Travis Etienne of a few years ago. That's in the realm as well. And if he ends up looking as good as he did a few years ago, now all of a sudden he could be way better than just that PPR special.
Yeah. Travis Etienne at Clemson early on in his NFL career, he's a lethal pass catching running back. And yeah, I know a lot of people are buying into this Bashal Tutin hype. I'm not really. I like Etienne and Bigsby a little more in this backfield. I just don't see Tutin making an impact. Plus, he's had a history of fumbling issues, so that's something
Right.
to worry about a little bit, especially at the NFL, the next level, different game from college. So definitely be cautious when you think about drafting Tootin now. He's going so late. It's like, is it really that much of a risk to draft him? Not really. So it's kind of a low risk, could be a high reward. But there are other guys that you could take a risk on in that later ADP. Keenan Allen, if you need a wide receiver, he's going to be the wide receiver too in this offense behind Lab McConkey and just other guys like Isaac Garendo. Maybe you get a Jadon Blue who sparks up the Cowboys backfields crowded, but Jadon Blue has a could be a clear role as a pass catching back in that Dallas offense. So there's just other guys you can look out for rather than Tootin. But yeah, Etienne and Bigsby, I do like because of Liam Cohen and his ability to get the offense going through the running back game. And we saw Bucky Irving and Rashad White both did pretty well last year. So
Yep.
this is a good price for Travis Etienne, I believe. Now, next up, it's going to be Drake London in round two, buy or sell.
I'm buying. I have him as my wide receiver five. I won't necessarily have to draft him. Well, if you draft him in the first, second round, it's the second half of the first round. I'm not averse to taking him there. And Drake London, we learned last year in the last 6 games what Atlanta became about. They became about getting the ball to Bijan Robinson and getting the ball to Drake London. Everybody else fell off. And it was a smart way to go. You got two superstars, use the heck out of them. So in the last 6 games, we saw London getting 11 targets a game, over 90 yards a game. And then those 3 games of Penix. And I know that week 18 one was inflated, but that 11 targets went to 13. That 90-ish yards went to 117 a game. Drake London is an elite NFL receiver. He was picked in the first round of the draft, and it was a clear, successful pick. He can win deep. He can win in the middle. He can run after the catch. And his targets, don't be surprised to see him getting the 175, 180 target range, including a lot of red zone work. I won't put him ahead of the big three. But you know what? If somebody twisted my arm and with neighbors dealing with the foot injury still and now a little shoulder, I mean, if somebody twisted my arm, maybe there's a day I'd put London ahead of neighbors too. But for right now, he's my wide receiver five.
I think he's yeah, my wide receiver 5 or 6 right now as well, Jim. I really love Drake London. I actually was able to pair Justin Jefferson and Drake London as my first two wide receivers last weekend. So it was quite the start to my draft, and I really just had to go wide receiver heavy in a PPR league as the board fell to me. Chase Brown went the pick right before Drake London, so that was going to be the pick to pair, running back one with wide receiver one, but I'll take the two wide receiver ones, honestly, with Drake London and Justin Jefferson. I love Drake London in round two. If you draft a running back in round one, it's great value. He can produce top five wide receivers. Say he could be a dark horse to be the wide receiver one in fantasy if
Hmm.
all things go
Hmm.
his way with Michael Penix. Now, next up, this is the last buy or sell. Saquon Barkley. He's going as a top three running back, early round one ADP. Buy or sell on Saquon.
He's a buy, and I'm going to need a minute or two because I have a theory this year, and this is one I'm going to share with your listeners, and I've been sharing as much as I can. the NFL has changed. This is not the league of a while ago. A lot of people dropped Barkley's ADP for a while. It was really steaming. He was going in the middle of the first round instead of early. Why? Because everybody said 482 touches between the regular season and the postseason. And they're citing this old school rule of 375 where running backs didn't do great the next season. I want everybody to understand this. That NFL that we're citing for the rule of 375, there were 3 and 4 linebackers on the field. Those linebackers weighed 240 ish pounds. They were guided missiles. There were 7 run defenders and only 5 or 6 blockers. There were free runners hitting running backs. Well, the NFL's changed. Now, the base defense in the NFL is a 4-2-5, 4 linemen, 2 linebackers. So, first of all, you only got 6 run defenders. You got enough people to get a hat on everybody. Second thing, the average linebacker weighs 230 now. It's not over 240 like it used to be. So these are pass defenders. So the running backs, A, are not getting direct hits as much. They're getting hit by smaller guys. So remember and watch Barkley last year. How often did he ever take a big hit? It was super rare. So I think people are making a big mistake by saying that, oh, he got worn down last year. No, I don't see it happening. And so I think that the fallacy we could capitalize. Go back to Barkley because Barkley is going to be the player we saw last year. Can he twist an ankle? Yes. Can he, fall over, hurt his knee? Maybe. But I think those running back injuries were lessened last year because of the dynamic I told you with less defenders and less direct hits.
Yeah, and if he falls in your draft, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer after the 5th overall pick. If he's somehow still there, I
Hmm.
mean, you're drafting him regardless because we've seen him produce. Now, I am a little worried about him with his 2,000 yard rusher and how that has happened, but that's a small sample size. So
Hmm.
it's something to look out for. But for me personally, after pick 5, I'm fine with drafting Barkley. It's just earlier on, I'd probably rather have Bijan just because he's younger. But if Barkley falls, pull the trigger on him in round
Yep.
1 because he is such he has a high production, and the offensive line in Philly always one of the best in the NFL. They've done a good job about building that up. All right, Jim. So we've gone over some of the buy or sell. Let's go into some questions from the listeners. Question number 1: handcuff running back that you want to target later on in drafts.
You know, it's always interesting. I always like somebody else's handcuff. I don't want to take my own handcuff player because my roster is limited. But if I take somebody else's handcuff, now all of a sudden I might get an extra starting running back in my lineup. So the handcuff running back I like is Keaton Mitchell. I hope Derrick Henry does not miss time. If Derrick Henry missed time, Keaton Mitchell might only get 12, 14 carries a game, but that speed is so incredible. We saw, and he's back. He looks to be back from that injury. Last year, he was a shell of himself. Coach Harbaugh said it. Keaton Mitchell said it. So I like that, like him as that handcuff. And even if I didn't draft Henry, because if Henry goes down, Keaton Mitchell's going to be a big producer.
Yeah. I love that late round flyer. Keaton Mitchell, we saw him in preseason game 1. He is very productive and he has the speed that Henry doesn't. So it's a little change of pace back as well. They can
Hmm.
throw him in there
Hmm.
and pair that with Lamar Jackson. I mean, it's game over. Who do
Yes,
you
it
have to
is.
worry about more? The speed of Lamar, the speed of Keaton Mitchell. So yeah, I think the Ravens offense, the Ravens as a team in general are just fantastic. I love the run game for the Ravens this year. Next question up. Picking at the turn, pick 14 in a 14 team PPR league. Who would you look to target, Jim? I know you said that you had
Hmm.
this pick.
Yeah.
Was it last week or something? But who would you look to target at the turn for maybe a running back, wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver in a PPR league?
I mean, we talked about Drake London earlier, and often he falls there. You give him a second round. So Drake London, and I'm going to double down on Chase Brown. Now, if Derrick Henry falls there, I'm fine with Henry there. In the Kings Classic, if Henry fell, I would have taken him at 14, but he went. Jeff Ratcliffe took him, picked 12. Bob Harris would have taken him at 13. He never was getting to me. So at that point, yeah, it was Chase Brown, and because and again, 14 team league though. Here's the thing I'll point out: you might want to take 2 running backs there because know your league. If the people are in 14, the running backs are more scarce. So if you, I knew there'd be
Mhm.
a running back running the Kings Classic, so I wanted to take London, but I didn't have the luxury. So I took another running back, and I went with ultra high floor with Josh Jacobs. I didn't want to take the risk of Jonathan Taylor because of the injuries. Devon Achane only had 9.7 PPR points per game in his 6 games without Tua. I don't trust Tua to be on the field, so I just basically took the layup with Josh Jacobs, but Chase Brown was the one.
I like that. Yeah, definitely know your league. And like you're saying, wide receivers are deeper this year. And just because the years of the running back be getting the bulk of the carries, it's kind of past itself, you know? So now you're seeing more split backfields. So you can get the running backs that don't split carries as often, and those give you higher value at your RB1, RB2 positions, like Jim's talking about, which is why he went running back at the turn. And the last question, what is your number one sleeper pick at any position in the later rounds of drafts?
Sleeper pick in the later rounds has got to be Cedric Tillman of the Cleveland Browns. He's still going around wide receiver 65. When Amari Cooper got traded last year, Tillman, the former third round pick, stepped in with 3 games and he averaged 7 catches, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Is incredible. And then he had a game into the 40-yard range, then suffered a season ending concussion. But he's the real deal. He can win intermediate, he can win downfield. And I hope Joe Flacco sticks for a while as a quarterback. That certainly would help things, but I do think that Cedric Tillman late in the draft is a player to target.
Yeah, I liked him coming out of college. He was a guy that I thought would do well, and it just took a little bit of time. And last year we saw what he can provide to that offense. Joe Flacco definitely helps him out a lot more than any of the other QBs. I mean, the other QBs are just younger and they provide a little more risk in the passing game in that offense. But Joe Flacco, we've seen it from him. He's a quarterback that seems to never age. He's still there. So yeah, I do love Cedric Tillman. All right, Jim. So we went over players we like. We went over some players we don't like. We went over some buys, some sells, and then we went over a couple listener questions. And now, Jim, uh, what do you have for RotoWire, for your plugs, for your Twitter, just to wrap up the show and tell everyone where they can find you again if they weren't listening earlier on?
You can catch me on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. Again, threads of the day, stats of the day. Always link my videos and material there. Sirius XM Fantasy Channel 87, Saturdays and Sundays, 2 to 4 Eastern. Thursday nights, 10 to midnight. And then also my written works behind the paywall at RotoWire. We've really upgraded the site. We've changed everything. New mock draft simulator. Got a lot of great things. If you were subscribed to RotoWire, I'll get you 15% off. Use the code YouTube15 at checkout.
Love that, Jim. I really appreciate you coming on, giving the players you don't like, players you do like, answering some questions, some buys or sells. Our next episode is going to be on the wide receiver preview. So everyone stay tuned for that. That'll be coming out next week. And yeah, Jim, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. And it's going to be a great season for all of us.
Yeah, can't wait. Let's get the 2025 NFL season on. Thank you guys for listening and hope you have a fantastic weekend. If you were listening live, if you were listening on the audio side, I hope you have a great start to your week. It's coming out next week on the audio side. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the BA Sports Podcast.